Hi, Lisa. Good morning. Happy Monday.
Just a second. Good morning.
Good morning. All right, I'm going to get started because we had an appointment at 12 and you guys are on time. So we're going to talk about time management today. So I'm going to keep that promise and get started. Hi, Carmen. How are you? So, okay, so we have a bunch of stuff to get through, and what we're going to cover today is your schedule and what your schedule should look like as a newly licensed agent, and also, you know, what you should be focusing on for your business and how to really use your time effectively. So, in order to talk about our schedule, the first thing you need to understand is the key to running your schedule effectively is will rise and fall on your ability to prioritize your day, right? So there's this concept, it's the 80-20 principle, which some of you might be familiar with. What that principle says is that 80% of the results that you're looking for, right? Like, so 80% of the income that you will generate in this business will ultimately come from only 20% of the activities. And it was started by an Italian scientist who back in the 1800s was doing an observation of a cornfield. And what he noticed was that 80% of the corn that was being produced and then sold at the market was coming from only 20% of the corn stalks that were actually growing in that field. And then he started to see this pattern in other areas of his life. Another one, for example, was at that time in Italy, 80% of the whole country's wealth was being held by only 20% of the people in the country. And so this 80-20 principle, it's also known as the Pareto principle, that was the guy's name, can be used in many different facets of your life. And it probably might not be a new concept for you. The key to managing your time effectively really is to take this principle and put it into action. So here at Keller Williams, you will often hear of your 20% activities, right? So those 20% of activities that are going to yield 80% of the results you're looking for, or 80% of the income you're looking to generate through selling real estate are often referred to as your big rocks. That's a Keller Williams term you'll hear. You also might hear me talk and reference them as your dollar productive activities. So when you start to talk about time management, what the key really is to spend the majority of your day working on those dollar productive big rock activities. And so what are those for selling real estate? Well, obviously you have lead generation, right? So your number one job as a real estate agent is to every single day be talking to people about buying, selling, or investing in real estate, asking them if they have a real estate need or who they know that does, right? In addition to talking to new people, another 20% activity is lead follow-up. So that is following up with people in your database, following up with leads that you've received, maybe following up with somebody that you talked to in December that told you in February they were going to want to start to look for homes for sale, right? That's a way of lead generation through lead follow-up. So that is something that you want to focus on doing every day. Another 20% activity is marketing, right? Working on marketing pieces and marketing collateral, either working on your social media strategy, scheduling social media posts. Maybe you are farming an area, so you're sending out mailers to them or door knocking and handing out flyers. Working on marketing is another 20% activity. Another 20% activity is going on appointments, right? So when ultimately, if you're lead generating, you're following up with your leads, you're marketing yourself well, you are ultimately doing that with a goal of setting appointments for yourself. So going on the appointments is another 20% activity that is important and one of the things that you want to focus on doing every day. In addition to that, you have negotiating deals, right? Getting deals negotiated. Now, one thing that you will notice is not in this 20%, right? That's really like, that's kind of it with your, in terms of your 20% activities. It's lead generation, lead follow-up, marketing yourself, going on appointments, negotiating deals. What is not a 20% activity? Transaction management, right? Like the admin side of stuff, the getting the forms filled out, figuring out how to work commands, you know, all of the other busy work that comes along with selling real estate. Now, is it possible to spend your whole day doing those types of activities, right? Like watching a video on command and then creating an opportunity and then reading the forms and then sending out the forms and then sending an email to an attorney. That is the type of stuff that needs to get done. But if you really are serious about running your schedule effectively, that should not be your focus for the day. So when we talk about time management, it's important to start with the 80-20 principle, because what you want to do is you want to focus on those 20% activities, right? That's how you move your business forward every day. And the key really is to spend most of your day doing those 20% activities. Now, the next key, once you've identified what these 20% activities are, is to start with them first, right? So for most agents, lead generation is like your least favorite thing. I don't know if anybody on this call can relate to that, but that's most agents. Even though we're a sales business, we're in the business of sales, obviously, a lot of people are very hesitant to lead generate, put themselves out there. It can be uncomfortable, especially as a new agent, to do that. That's why we say lead generate first thing in the morning, right? Your first block of time that you're spending on your day should be spent on getting your 20% activities done. If you do it the reverse, what we have seen is that you will start with the transaction management side of things, right? So you'll start the day by opening up your email and you'll see an email from me maybe with a video to watch, or an email from Aaron with a form or compliance, promoting a compliance thing, or you have a couple transactions going. So you have an email from your client asking about a question about their mortgage, or an email from the attorney asking for a document. If you get into the flow of focusing on doing those things first, 9 times out of 10, you will not then switch back over to actually getting what's important done. Okay, so you want to always start with your dollar productive activities first. That way too, if you're able to complete that section of your lead generation, then really the rest of the day is freed up to do the rest of the 80% stuff that needs to get done. So this is the standard routine of a millionaire real estate agent. And this is straight from the MREA book, which is the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book that Gary Keller wrote. That is really a blueprint for selling real estate. If you haven't read that book yet, you should get it and read it if you're looking to grow a really purposeful, effective schedule. So this is what the standard is if you're working in real estate full-time, and we'll talk a little bit about what you should do if you're not working full-time in real estate, if you're still a dual agent, meaning you're working a separate job and you only have limited time to work in your real estate business. We'll cover that too. But assuming that you are a full-time realtor, this is what your standard schedule should look like. So you want to do lead generation every day first thing in the morning. So from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m., it's active lead generation. What that should look like is the first 30 minutes of that should be scripting and role playing, right? So getting together the scripts you're going to use that day. You can connect with somebody else in productivity coaching or somebody in the office as a whole, in general. You can connect with them to be your role play partner, right? So role play some of the conversations you're going to have. You want to set your goal for the session, right? And then gather your list. So that first 30 minutes, you should be really like preparing to actively lead generate. So you want to prepare the list. If you're pulling a list from Kohl's, right? Now you all have access to Kohl's Realty resource. You have the login. You can log in and pull phone numbers from there if you want to make cold calls. So that first 30 minutes would be pulling the numbers, getting them in order in front of you, pulling out your scripts, practicing the scripts based on who you're calling that day, and getting set up. And set yourself a goal, right? Set yourself a goal for the session. Now, the goal should be based around the numbers that we set up when we did your business plan. So for instance, if your goal is to schedule 1 appointment per day, right? That's your goal for your lead generation block of time. So from that 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. block of time, your goal is to set 1 appointment. For example, say for instance, you are hosting an open house, and it's Monday morning now, and you're hosting an open house on Saturday. So Monday morning, you know that you want to circle prospect around the neighborhood to tell all the neighbors that you are selling the house. So your preparation for that would look like going into Kohl's, pulling out the neighborhood data and downloading it into an Excel spreadsheet so you have the numbers. Getting the script that you're going to use when you call the neighbors, and then practicing it with somebody, right? And then keeping a visual in front of you in terms of what your goals are. So is it to, with an open house example, is it to invite 10 people to the open house? Is it to set yourself 1 appointment before or after the open house? Is it to find 1 person in that neighborhood that's also thinking of buying or selling something, or knows somebody that's moving to the neighborhood? Now, once you get that 30 minutes, right, of preparation, then the next 2 hours should be active lead generation, right? So that's the part of the day where you're solely focused on hitting your goals. Now, here's some things to keep in mind in terms of your active lead generation time. 1, have those lead sheets in front of you. So in that Google Drive in the Google Drive folder that I have for all of you, there's a buyer doc and there's a seller doc. As you're lead generating, those are the forms you should be using to get the information down for people that are interested in buying or selling something, right? That will help guide you in the conversation of qualifying them and setting an appointment. There's also a document in that Google Drive folder where you can track your dials, okay? So what that means is, if you're really purposeful about tracking your numbers, you also want to track your lead generation efforts. So for instance, you might make 20 phone calls, and from those 20 phone calls, you might get 4 people to pick up the phone, right? So there's instructions on that sheet that will show you how to mark the form appropriately so that you're tracking those numbers. From those 4 people, maybe you've set 1 appointment. Well, if you're able to track those numbers day by day by day, now all of a sudden you know what your conversion ratios are, right? So now when you sit down to lead generate your lead generation, you can confidently say, okay, my goal for this session is to set myself 1 appointment. And I know, because I've been tracking my numbers, that I need to call 20 people and have 4 conversations. And on average, that is how I will get my 1 appointment for the day. And I think just being that specific about your time will help you significantly with time management, right? Being that purposeful about that time is understanding the goalposts that you're trying to hit, understanding and preparing, for the phone calls, and then tracking what you're doing to make it predictable, so that you just sit down, it's 2 hours of calls, you make X amount of calls, and you spit out your appointment so that you're on track to hit your income goal for the year. Now, the next tip that I have is that as you're doing this active lead generation time, don't stop after every phone call. So in our example, if you call 20 people and you get 4 people on the phone, when you get the first person on the phone and you fill out that buyer or seller lead sheet, don't hang up from them and then open the MLS and put them onto an auto alert, or start preparing a CMA for their property for the listing presentation, or printing out your marketing plan. Don't do any of that, right? Take your lead sheet, put it aside, write your notes on it, put it aside, and get back to lead generating. The key is to have as minimum interruptions as possible when you're doing this active lead generation. If every time you talk to somebody and then you hang up and then you have to go in and do all the stuff that you just promised them you would do, you're going to end up not getting back on the phone, because you'll get into a wormhole and then that will be it for the day. So during this 2 hours of active lead generation time, that's why we have those sheets. Fill out the sheet, fill out all the information. If there's something that you need to take action on at the end of the call, one quick note, write an A in the margin and circle it, write what you need to do as an action item. And that way, once you're done with your 2 hours, you'll have a 30-minute follow-up and follow through where you will then take action on the things that you promised you said you would do while you were lead generating on the phone. Okay, so you want to go and do your 2 hours of active lead generation, then you'll do 30 minutes of follow-up and follow-through activities. So for instance, if you're calling somebody that's a potential buyer, so you set a buyer consultation with them, or you have a good conversation with them about what they're looking for in a home. One of the things you can do at the end of that conversation is ask them if they would like to be put on an auto alert through the MLS, right? You'll get some information on the homes that they're looking for, and then you will offer to put them onto an auto alert. So that will be one of your activities during your follow-up and follow-through, right? Another example would be taking all of the people that you talked to and putting them into your database, right? Do that at the end. Like, don't do it as you're going along. Stop, open command, put all their contact information in like on a one-off. That will make it very difficult to be able to keep in the flow of things. So you want to do 30 minutes follow through activities, putting your names in your database, adding dates. So if you've told people, okay, if you talk to, for instance, a seller that says, oh, I took my home off the market. I don't want to relist until the spring, but you can give me a call back in March, right? Then you want a calendar for yourself when you want to follow through. Clean up the calls so that you can end the session. Any questions? Does anybody have any questions on this first 3-hour block of lead generation time? And if you do, just make sure you unmute yourself before you talk because I have you all muted. Okay. So now you've done 3 hours of lead generation. What you can do then is take your lunch break, right? Like realtors are allowed to take lunch breaks too. So that would be from 12 to 1. You probably will want to decompress at that point because you likely have just talked to a lot of people. Maybe you've had some uncomfortable conversations. Maybe you're just like a little bit overwhelmed from all of the lead generating you just did. So give yourself a little time to decompress. This is a great time where now you can fit in that going into our productivity coaching Facebook group and reading an article that I posted, or watching one of the videos in our Google Drive folder, or listening to an audiobook or a podcast for an hour, doing something like that where you're still, growing your business, but you're giving your mind a little bit of time to rest. So you take a lunch. Then from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. is when you want to do lead follow-up, right? So for instance, in our instance where you talked to somebody this month and they said, call me back in March. Now it's February 15th. I always recommend if somebody tells you to follow up with them in whatever time frame they tell you, follow up in half of that time frame. And it's as easy as calling them halfway to that. So in our example of March, you would call them in mid-February, and it doesn't need to be, hey, list your house now with me instead of March. It's just, hey, just touching base to make sure we're still on track to talk in March. If a lot of times what will happen is people's timelines speed up, and then whatever realtor's in front of them right then, they end up just listing with, even though they had a good conversation with you back a few months ago. So from that 1 to 3 p.m., that's a 2-hour block of time. This is where you can do those follow-up phone calls, right? Follow up with the leads in your pipeline that you're keeping. Follow up with maybe if you're running Facebook advertising and you've gotten some leads from there, call those leads and follow up with them. This is also a time that you can do your transaction management stuff, right? So now that you've hit your goals for the day, you can now pivot into your 80% mark. So that can be when you start with your transaction management, answering the emails that you have, returning the text messages from your clients if they have questions. You can do all of that information from that 1 to 3 o'clock time frame. Hang on one second. Lori's handing me something. Okay. That's okay. Put this here so I don't forget it. So the 1 to 3 o'clock time frame is when you can get your busy work done, right? Now, the caveat to that is you can only do that if you hit your goals from the morning, right? If your goal from the morning was to set yourself one appointment and you lead generated for 3 hours and did not set yourself that one appointment, well, then you better go back to lead generating after lunch, right? Until you set that one appointment for the day. If you're serious about hitting your goals. If you're not that serious about hitting your goals, then go do whatever you want. But if you're really serious about making the income you want to make this year, then you have to stay committed to hitting that appointment goal or that dial goal for the day and moving your business forward in that sense. So that's a 2-hour block of time. Now, a couple of things to note here. What, if anybody, you might have noticed this. I did not start the day by opening up my email and answering emails from attorneys, text messages from clients, information from mortgage people, going down the loop of like the notes from Lori in the compliance department, for example, right? Like that is not a good way to start your day. If you start your day off that way, you will continue to get sucked into that vortex of non-busy work, and it will be much more difficult to loop back around and start to be productive. There are no real estate emergencies. There are no real estate emergencies. If somebody's house is on fire, you shouldn't be the one they call anyway, right? Like they should call the fire department. There are no real estate emergencies. Somebody that texts you at 10 a.m. can wait until 1 p.m. to get a response, right? This is super important, and it was one of the hardest lessons I had to learn as a newly licensed agent, right? Is that people will treat you the way you teach them. And so if you become the agent that your clients can text at 9 a.m. or 9 p.m. or text at 6 a.m. and you're responding to them, well, now you've taught them that they can reach out to you 24 hours a day and you will immediately respond to them. I will tell you that people generally do not have that expectation that it's going to be an instantaneous, immediate response. That is something pressure that we put on ourselves, and is not necessarily the perception of the general public. And you can probably relate to that if you've bought a house yourself, right? Like, or if you've ever dealt with an attorney. If, say, you have an attorney retained to do a will for you. If you emailed that attorney, would you anticipate that they were going to answer you within the first 3 minutes that you sent the email? Usually not, right? You understand that there's going to be some time in ability in them getting back to you. Same thing as a real estate professional, right? We're professionals. We have to run our business like a business, and that means that you fit people into the block of times as they fit. Your ability to do this will directly relate to your ability to time manage your day. In the same vein, actually, okay, let me wrap up the day and then I'll give you some keys. So during this 1 to 3 time, that's when you can get into your busy work, right? Nothing that happened at 10 a.m. is going to be fixed or need to be fixed before 1 p.m. So just if you're able to time block in that manner, you'll be effective. Then from 3 p.m. on, that is your time that you can now go on appointments, right? So presumably you've been lead generating for 3 hours consistently every day. That means that you should have some appointments going. You should be talking to some people, some buyers and some sellers. So now from 3 p.m. on, that's when you can go on your appointments. Now, of course, sometimes you'll go on appointments at 1 or 2, whatever it is, that's fine. What I will say is that you absolutely do not want to start scheduling your appointments during your lead generation time. And so this is what I always say. If you had a buyer client and the buyer client you had a buyer client scheduled to see houses at 10 a.m. and then another buyer client called you and said that they wanted to see houses at 10 a.m. Would you cancel your showings with your first buyer in order to accommodate your second buyer? My guess is, and my hope is, that the answer would be no. You would say to the second buyer, I'm sorry, I have an appointment at that time. Are you able to go at 3 o'clock or 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock, right? You put people into your schedule that way. It's the exact same idea with your lead generation. So if you are super committed to making money, you know, big money in this business, you also have to be committed to lead generating every single day. And so that means that you don't necessarily have to say that to clients, right? Like, I'm sorry, I'm lead generating during that time. You can simply just say, I have an appointment at that time. Are you available at X time or Y time? One of the easiest, best closes that I use pretty consistently is an alternate choice close, okay? So obviously when you're closing somebody, you're closing them for an appointment. And the easiest way to maintain a healthy time blocked schedule and to stay on track is by just giving them two choices, right? So are you available to meet at 1 p.m. on Monday or 3 p.m. on Monday? Right? And letting them pick. If it's neither of those, then give them two more choices that work within your schedule. If you do it the reverse and it's let me know when you can meet, let me know when you can see the house, let me know when you're available, now you are on their schedule and all of a sudden you're running all around and your day becomes completely disjointed. So it's super important that if your goal is to make consistent income, that you protect that lead generation time at all costs, and then you schedule your appointments in the afternoon. Now, listen, that being said, there are some instances where maybe the person works nights, right? Like maybe they're like, I go to work at 3 p.m. 7 days a week, so I'm never going to be available after 1. If that's the case, it's not like, okay, never mind, then you can't be my client, right? I would say if that's the case, schedule the appointment, but that doesn't mean that then you just get off from lead generating during that hour, right? So if you schedule an appointment for 10 a.m. on a Tuesday and it's going to be 10 to 11, so one of your hours of your 3-hour block of lead generation time, then you need to replace that hour another day that week, meaning maybe then on Wednesday you lead generate from 9 to 1 and take a late lunch or skip your lunch that day. If you know that your contacts are only, okay, I have a question, hang on, oops, cancel. If you know your contacts are only available to talk in the evenings, you recommend that you switch your call lead generating to the evening some days. You can absolutely. So if you get into the habit of lead generating and you're noticing that nobody's picking up the phone if you call in the middle of the day, you can adjust your call times. 8:30 to 9 is usually a pretty good call time for cold leads. Also like 5:30 to 6:30 is another good call time. You certainly can switch your lead generating. You just want to make sure that you do it, because sometimes, again, like if you wait until if it's the last thing to get done during the day, then a lot of times you'll get to 5 o'clock and be like, I've done so much, I don't want to make phone calls, right? Like I'm just not into it. I can't muster up the strength. I've worked for 8 hours on all my files and I don't want to do the lead generation times. So you just have to have an extra like layer of accountability to yourself if that really is your plan. It's certainly possible though. But again, you want to look and see if it's 3 hours a day, your ultimate goal is to be lead generating then 15 hours per week, right? So 3 hours a day, 5 days a week would be 15 hours per week. So you want to make sure that you're doing that in that time frame. Now, another caveat, depending on what your goals are, you might not need to lead generate 3 hours a day in order to hit your appointment goal, right? You can get really into a great groove or get really good at working your database or cold calling where in an hour time of calling, you're able to set your one appointment for the day. If that's the case, then it's much less lead generation time, or you're just making more money for yourself because you're setting an additional appointments within the time that you've allowed. Any other questions on what your ideal schedule should look like as a full-time successful real estate agent? Okay, so here are some keys that I have to doing this effectively, right? Because it sounds simple and easy when you say it, and then in practice, sometimes it's not so much. So my first tip is to make sure that you have a plan that you're working from, right? If you start the day going, what should I do today? I don't know. Let me think about and develop an entire strategy now that then I will sit down and execute on in the same block of time. you probably will not do both, right? There's planning time and then there's execution time. That 30-minute block of time you're using before you get on the phones is not to create the entire strategy that you're going to do. It's really just to pull the resources for the strategy that you've already developed. So one of the reasons why when we're first onboarding and we're meeting together, we work on your economic business model, so you know how many appointments you should be setting during this lead generation time. Then from there, I usually leave you with the homework of completing a 1-3-5, right, which is your lead generation strategy. And from that lead generation strategy, you want to make sure that that's what you're executing on, right? That's your living, breathing document. So whatever you put on there for your cold buyer leads, your cold seller leads, and your warm leads and referrals, those are the activities that you're doing during that lead generation time. Now, there's an additional form called a 411, which breaks it down from your big lead generation strategy for the year down to weekly actionable items that you can do. A blank copy of a 411 is in our Google Drive under the Business Documents tab. You can locate it there. That will help you get down to like a micro level what you should be doing every day. Like the example I gave at the beginning, if you are hosting an open house on Saturday, and that's one of your things on your 1-3-5 is to host 2 open houses per month. So now it's one of the weekends leading up to when you're hosting the open house. Well, what is your open house strategy? On Mondays, you cold call the neighborhood. On Tuesdays, you start your Facebook ad. On Wednesdays, do you door knock. On Thursdays, you go around and flyer the neighborhood. On Fridays, you go and put out your signs, right? Is that your open house strategy? If so, then when you sit down for your 9 to 12 p.m. lead generation block of time and it's Monday, you know exactly what you need to do. You know exactly what lists to pull, exactly what scripts to call from, and you're just gathering that quickly in like the 20 to 30 minutes leading up to that. So you need to make sure that you actually have a plan you're working from. Otherwise, you'll get into the weeds of trying to create the strategy and execute the strategy in one block of time, and it will lead to you probably not being super effective. The next step I have is to start your day with a proper morning routine. This was a big shift I saw in my business when I got a hold of my morning routine and I became very purposeful first thing in the morning when I woke up. You do need a bit of strategy, right, and clarity first thing in the morning so that you can execute on your day. There is a document, it's called the Perfect Day Planner. I created it. It's in our Google Drive folder. It's also posted in our Facebook group. That is a form that I utilize every day. I start with 3 things that I'm grateful for. I set my priorities for the day. I list my lead generation strategies that I'm working on. I list some of the 80% stuff down at the bottom. I write out my affirmations on that form. And it's a really great way to put down on paper my intentions for the day. So I would encourage everybody to utilize that as a jumping off point and make that the start of the day. Now, sometimes what that means is that you are going to have to get up a little bit earlier than you're getting up now, right? So to do something different, right, or to get different results or better results, you generally are going to have to do something different. And this was one of the things that I had to come to terms with when I was struggling with my own time management stuff was, okay, I just need to commit to getting up 30 minutes earlier. And that 30 minutes doesn't really make or break how tired I feel during the day. I don't lose any energy by losing 30 minutes of sleep. But what it does is it really allows me that 30-minute block of time to plan out my day so that I'm really executing on it. So this is what I do that I found effective. I wake up about 30 minutes before my husband or anybody else is in the house. I write in a business journal. So what I write in there is a number of things. Sometimes I write about my goals or my big ideas that I'm working towards, right? Sometimes I journal about things that are making me nervous or scared. Sometimes I journal about struggles I'm having or, things that I really want to work through in my business. I found that putting it out on paper, sometimes just looking at it, I'm like, that's a silly thing to be nervous about. And it is just a way to move past it. Other times I've written goals out on paper and I've looked at it and gone, oh my gosh, that really is the goal. And now I'm super motivated to get through it. So I get clarity on where I'm standing right now in my business. Then from there, I fill out the perfect day planner. Now, the key to that is to set priorities for the day. So this is another time management key. You really should be setting priorities for the day. And in my opinion, it shouldn't be any more than 3 things. It needs to be 4 or 5, fine, but I try to stick to 3 priorities for the day, and all 3 of those things need to make you money. So a priority is not sending a purchase offer to an attorney. It's not attending a home inspection. It's none of that 80% stuff that we talked about. It's 3 things that will make you money that day. So it might be my 3 priorities are following up with all of the leads in my pipeline, right? Because it's the first of the month. Starting my Facebook ad for my open house I'm hosting this weekend. Calling 10 names and adding them into my database, right? Completing the daily 10-4, which is calling 10 people and adding them into your database, calling 10 people that are already in your database to follow up with them, previewing 2 houses, and writing 10 handwritten note cards. That might be one of your priorities for the day. Only set 3. That way you know, okay, this is the stuff I'm committed to doing today that I know if I get it done, my business will take a step forward between today and tomorrow. Now, this will also help you because once you've finished those 3 things, everything else is not irrelevant, but everything else can either wait or you'll accomplish it anyway, right? So you'll do those 3 things as your priority, fit in all the other 80% stuff you have to do. And then if you decide, okay, from there, I'm done and I'm not going to do anything else at 6 o'clock. I want to hang out with my kids. I want to watch TV on the couch. At least you know that you've moved your business forward on 3 important points. That is a huge shift that I made in my own business that really allowed me to create a work-life balance that made a little bit more sense than the way I had been doing things previously. So again, you're not going to execute your whole lead generation strategy in 1 3-hour block of time, and you're not going to move your whole business like 5 paces forward in one day. The key is to analyze what is the next logical step to take towards my goal that I can accomplish today. What are 2 or 3 things around doing that I can actually get done, and then just committing to doing those 3 things. And then the next day again, having that 30-minute block of time to replan now today's new priorities based on what I was able to accomplish the day before. Another couple of tips. You want to make sure, we only have 3 minutes, so I'm going to get through this and I want to make sure I cover what to do if you're working as a dual agent. So one of the tips I always say is, one, of course, you always need to track your results. We covered that, right? The only way to know if you're really running an effective schedule is if your results are showing up. So it's important that you're tracking all of your numbers and the activities that you're doing. If you're struggling with this, please schedule one-on-one coaching with me. Let's talk a little bit about it. Let's create a strategy that works for you. Another thing is be careful what you commit to, right? Like, we will throw all the information in the world at you here, but it's important to be really clear on what you're working on and then create your business around that. So take classes around the 2 or 3 things that are applicable to your business, to your lead generation strategy. Watch the videos I put together that are applicable to your lead generation strategy. You don't have to watch every single thing known to man. Get clear on what your goals are and then build your education and your resources around that. Okay, so now some of you are working as dual agents, meaning you work full-time and you're trying to fit in a real estate as a full-time business, or especially my guys that are looking to transition to selling real estate full-time. You have to first come to terms with the fact that you're probably going to be having to work 2 full-time schedules if you want real estate to eventually be a full-time income, because it's going to take full-time effort to get those results, right? So the key to creating your time blocks calendar is to look at your schedule and see what you can realistically commit, how many hours you can realistically commit that every single week to real estate, and make that non-negotiable. If it's 15 hours, that's fine. Just make sure whatever number you set is a real number. Like, if you're not going to be able to work 50 hours in real estate and 60 hours at your job. Maybe you can, but you're probably going to get burnt out pretty quick. So be reasonable so that you can actually execute on it. Now, in order to create a schedule that works, it's as simple as this. Take a Monday through Friday. We have less than a minute, so I'm going to talk really fast. Take a Monday through Friday calendar with all of the times listed out. Start with your block of time that you're working, right? So block out all those times when you're going to be at work. And then based on if you have 15 hours left, fill in those 15 hours of when you're working. Now for you, it's going to be the 90-10 principle. So 90% of those hours need to be spent lead generating, lead following up, doing those big rock activities. The other 10% can be everything else. All right, so I don't know, the chat's going to cut off in less than a minute, but I hope that this was a helpful coaching. If you have questions on anything that we covered today, please reach out to me and schedule a one-on-one coaching, and we can start to create a schedule that works based on your hours. All right, thanks guys. Happy Monday. I hope you all are productive this week. You run